Welcome to the Despicable Maine podcast, the podcast that shows you how despicable the state of Maine really is. Today on the show, we're going to be examining how and why prosecutors indict, prosecute, and convict based on a statement instead of any facts. But this only applies to the peasants and does not apply to the members of the Good Old Boys Club. So here we go with episode 6 of the Despicable Maine podcast. First, I'd like to give a shout out to all those who sent tips and stories into the site at tips@despicablemaine.org. I would like to also thank all of those who has purchased fear gear through the website. By wearing the fear gear into Maine courts, you are telling them directly, I demand to be treated fair. And don't forget to like and subscribe. In this segment, we are going to re-examine more in depth about an Orland man who was recently cleared of some very serious charges because there was no probable cause and the evidence and indictment was based on the statement of one person who lied. Bryce Babson of Orland, Maine was indicted on gross sexual assault, aggravated cruelty to animals, and endangering the welfare of a child. And Bryce Babson would have been convicted if he didn't get an attorney that is not from the area. This is just how it works in Hancock and Washington County, Maine. This is because local attorneys work directly with the prosecutor to convict you. But if you get an attorney that's not from the area, you might have a chance. District Attorney Matt Foster said,
At the time of the indictment, we had investigative materials that supported probable cause for prosecution.
The lawyer that's not from the area quickly discovered evidence that conflicted with the prosecution's evidence. What was that evidence? District Attorney Matt Foster declined to elaborate. Bryce Babson said the District Attorney's Office evidence was statements made by just one individual. And this is all it takes to get indicted in any Maine court. And this is why the police lie just a little on the police report, is so the district attorney can file charges against you based on a statement instead of any actual facts. And this wrongful conviction stuff is out of control. Here's a clip from a few years back.
Over the last 10 years, there have been 21 men accused of sexual assault or rape. Every one of those 21 men were eventually found innocent. In every one of these cases, there was no probable cause. In other words, there was no DNA, there were no bruises, there were no cuts. The liaison was clearly consensual. In some cases, there was clearly an incentive to make a false allegation of rape. Nonetheless, in every one of these 21 cases, the man who was accused of this deed was brought to prosecution, was eventually found innocent. In these 21 cases, in every case, prosecutor Mary Kellett has been involved in prosecuting these cases. Millions of dollars have been spent prosecuting these cases, whereas the true victims, they have been forced to wait in line to not have their case heard or their case delayed in order that these trivial and false cases be pursued. Part of the problem is that there is a policy of no-drop prosecution that's pursued here in the Ellsworth area and other parts of the state. If you go to the website of the district attorney, it says, quote, as district attorney, I will vigorously prosecute all cases. That statement is unethical on its face because prosecutors are required to respect the principle of probable cause. So this no-drop prosecution policy is unethical and it's bad because it hurts victims who have to wait in line for their case to eventually be heard.
The first thing is there's been way more of these cases than what is in this video. These people have been practicing the art of wrongful convictions for close to 30 years. It's because they get money for each case, but more money if it's a conviction. And they're doing this because the area has a fake domestic violence crisis. Now, even though Mary Kellett is gone, they still do the same thing, charging without probable cause. charging somebody or even indicting them on somebody else's word alone with absolutely no proof. And the high percentage of these individuals making these statements against the man are a vindictive woman that they broke up with or have a dispute with. And who they're going to believe is based on who you are in society. If you're a member of the Good Old Boys Club and you accuse somebody of something, they will be found automatically guilty because that is enough proof. If the statement is made by an angry woman, that is also proof of a crime. No physical evidence is needed, or as required by law. Listen to what Mike Weber has to say. He was dragged through the mud by this kangaroo court.
I was wrongly accused and falsely prosecuted. There was no circumstantial evidence. There was so many questions. There were so many professionals that discredited findings, and I was prosecuted anyway. In my opinion, it turned into be a witch hunt, and I was guilty automatically. And it destroyed a big portion of my life. And it's not fair. If somebody commits a crime, yes, prosecute them, find them guilty, and they will serve their sentence. In my case, there was no evidence, and I was continuously put through the system for no reason. That's really all I have to say.
What were you charged with?
I was charged with 14 counts of gross sexual assault. And it was the first time. And the second time, again, I was found innocent the first time on all 14 counts. The second time, I was charged with unlawful sexual contact, which then was changed to unlawful touching. And that was also acquitted. There was no findings, there was no evidence.
How long ago was this, Michael?
This was, the first one was, let's see, I was 35, so it would have been 3 years ago. The second one was a year and a half ago. And I just finished up a year ago. And I mean, I've been fighting this for 4 years, pretty much. And it's just been an ongoing battle. And I don't want to see somebody else have to go through what I have. It's amazing what it does, and being in the community and in a small business, you're constantly looking over your shoulder. You know, it really destroys your life.
Mike's case is interesting in this aspect. He was involved in essentially a custody fight, and there was a guardian ad litem, a professional person, who interviewed his two stepdaughters and asked specifically whether or not there were any issues regarding Mike while he was their stepfather. They adamantly denied that there were. The guardian ad litem recommended that Mike's natural daughter be in Mike's custody. Immediately, within 2 days of issuing that report, the two stepdaughters accused him of regularly, nightly, molesting both of them together in their bedroom down the hall from where their mother was sleeping. The guardian ad litem reinstituted his investigation, did a great job, and concluded that the allegations were more likely the result of his recommendation of the change of primary residence of their stepsister than having any basis in fact. The Department of Health and Human Services brought a child protective case. There were motions in the family law case on the change of primary residence. The family law magistrate conducted a hearing and made a judicial finding that the allegations were not credible. Then there was a child protective case in which the judge heard the evidence, and the judge determined that the allegations were not credible. 10 months later, after two judicial findings and a guardian ad litem finding, that the allegations were not credible, the district attorney's office indicted him. Please understand, there wasn't enough evidence 3 times earlier to sustain proof by a preponderance. The state then indicted, alleging they could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mike was guilty. It's probably, in my 30 years, the most egregious abuse of prosecutorial discretion.
Do you still not think it's a problem? This is a court where the judge will tell you that if the prosecution is not asking for jail time, you have no right to a court-appointed attorney.
You don't have any right to an attorney if the prosecution is not asking for any jail time. I am Robert Murray, and I can interpret the United States Constitution however I wish, because this is my court, and I make the rules, you don't.
That is not what it says in the United States Constitution. It does not work that way. By telling you this, you're being denied due process, and they're doing it because you will be confused and convict yourself. They know by denying you an attorney, you only have 3 choices: guilty, not guilty, or nolo. So either way, they got you. And these district attorneys have been indicting people based on statements and no facts for years. They're all a bunch of criminals that need to be disbarred and put in prison for outright violating people's rights, denying due process, and multiple other violations. These courts are 100% kangaroo and are convicting for profit. All men not in the good old boys club that live there want to take notice of how this really works, because you could be next. These people don't even understand what proved beyond a reasonable doubt means. So understand that the next time you're a victim of these people, if you live there, you want to insist that they prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And the prosecutor will not prove anything unless the judge tells them to. And oh, by the way, the judge and the prosecutor are really, really good friends and golfing buddies. Egregious use of prosecutorial discretion. Hey, that should be the new motto for Hancock and Washington County, Maine. They need a big billboard when you enter the county that says, "Welcome to Hancock County, home of egregious use of prosecutorial discretion. Welcome to Washington County, Maine, home of egregious use of prosecutorial discretion." Yeah, these counties should be real proud of that. Makes a good image for anybody that wants to move there. Visit the land of egregious use of prosecutorial discretion. And if you think any of the judges in either of these counties are fair and not kangaroo crooked, watch this.
Vladik Filler filed 2 motions with the court with Judge Robert Murray, the judge in this case. One of those motions was a stay of sentence. That is, requesting his sentence, his 21 days, be pushed forward. And the reason being, he was still receiving, and up until today was receiving, medical treatment for an automobile accident. He had some soft tissue injuries and spinal injuries as a result of a car accident. And he was receiving treatment, and he wanted to push his 21 days forward so that he could finish the medical treatment. He filed that motion 6 weeks ago. The second motion he filed was to have his new lawyer recognized by the court, which is necessary. Yesterday, the judge, Judge Robert Murray, told him that he had to get a sworn recusal from his previous lawyer and get another document signed, a whole bunch of holy fuck, what the hell. And Vladik Filler got all that done. And Judge Robert Murray denied his motions, denied the motion to stay, to push the serving of the sentence forward until he'd finished his medical treatment. So he's being denied medical treatment for an injury, and also declined to recognize his lawyer. So he's now in Mary Kellett's jail with no lawyer, which means that although Vladik Filler is the principal witness in Mary Kellett's disciplinary hearing, he will not be allowed out of his cell to come up and testify because he has no lawyer. This is a more blatant, a more flagrant and over-the-top example of absolute purposeful corruption of the court. You couldn't write it if you were writing a comic book. Judge Robert Murray and Mary Kellett have both got to go.
And this right here was just one example. There are literally thousands more. Purposeful corruption of the court. And this Robert Murray is one of the judges that'll tell you that you have no right to a court-appointed attorney if the district attorney is not asking for jail time.
You don't have any right to an attorney if the prosecution is not asking for any jail time. I am Robert Murray, and I can interpret the United States Constitution however I wish, because this is my court, and I make the rules, you don't.
If you hear any Maine judge say that, file a judicial complaint against them. Both of the Murray judges in the area are 100% kangaroos. That's because it's Kangaroo County. If you still don't think it's Kangaroo County, check out this next clip where Matt Foster, the current district attorney, explains how Andrea Nunn, the secretary of the district attorney's office, has the powers of police under the reign of terror of Carletta Bassano. Watch as Matt Foster explains it.
I have a client who is charged with operating after suspension. A fairly small charge. It's a misdemeanor. He is, if the facts are true, accused of driving about 150 feet down the side of the road to a farm stand to deliver his produce to his farm stand. If the allegations are true, he didn't have a license. It's a definite violation of the law. And there's a mandatory minimum sentence on it of a fine. Now, it seems pretty simple until you look at who the complaining witness is. The complaining witness is the secretary of the district attorney's office. And the reason that she complained about this gentleman is because they're having a boundary line dispute between their properties. And the district attorney's office has sent me an offer on that case to put this gentleman in jail for 2 days for this conduct that requires a fine. Now, that secretary used state resources to research this guy's driver's license. She brought that, she went and supposedly went and observed him driving and then brought that information to the district attorney. The district attorney has agreed to prosecute that case based on her say-so, knowing that there is a significant boundary line dispute and other disputes between the parties who are actually related. So that's, when I say perspective, that's the kind of thing that just cannot go on in a public office like the district attorney's office. And it makes me so upset to see that type of thing going on that I just really believe that there needs to be some new perspective, new people in there. Am I saying that I'm going to run in there and fire everybody? No, that's not what I'm saying. But there needs to be somebody there to put a rein in on things that are going on.
A year ago, there was an unfortunate situation in the DA's office with Mary Kellett. It made the newspapers. How would you have handled that as DA?
We need a little background. Just what was it about?
Well, there was information withheld that a man did time.
Did everybody catch that? There was, say it again, Janice.
There was information withheld from the courts, and a man did some time for it.
Mary Kellett was an assistant district attorney.
So I just want to know, as DA, how would, how would you handle?
You're standing you first.
Okay. The only thing that I know about the situation is what I've seen in the papers and what I've heard, through the bar, and there was a bar complaint filed, and she was sanctioned in some way from the Board of Bar Overseers. Knowing that information, if I had been the district attorney at the time, she probably would not be working there. However, I only have that part of the information. So, am I saying that if I get elected, I'm going to go firing people? No, I'm not saying that. I think that any type of personnel issue or professional issue like that needs to be looked at from the perspective of being in charge of that person, talking to the person, and trying to work it out and do what is right for people who voted the district attorney into office and the community. And justice, for one thing. It's such a black mark on the justice system to have anybody in the office of the district attorney, or private practice attorney for that matter, who puts the justice system in jeopardy in any way. And withholding evidence or saying things to a jury that are improper, it doesn't make sense in terms of what we're here to do. And so, to answer the question, if I had been there at the time, knowing what I know now, she probably would never have been. But that would be a decision that would need to be made once an election.
So that's pretty bad that the Secretary of the District Attorney's Office has the power to file charges against somebody. This is how kangaroo corrupt these courts are. I'm not done though. After Matt Foster just explained how she filed charges against this guy and demanded jail time, Paul Cavanaugh, the other assistant district attorney under the reign of Carletta Bassano, stands up and says this right in front of the sheriff, which is the guy in the blue shirt right beside him with his finger on his lip.
Paul?
I want to ask Paul the same.
Thank you. A couple of teaching moments, as we call it, with my kids to make sure. The district attorney's office does not get cases from the public. We get them only from law enforcement. You can't call and say, here's a report, I want somebody prosecuted. We would refer you to law enforcement in whatever jurisdiction.
So Paul Cavanaugh, this assistant district attorney, stands up and says that nobody from the general public can call and have a complaint filed against anybody. It has to go through law enforcement. So he is admitting right on camera that the Secretary of the District Attorney's Office is law enforcement. Is he getting that confused with being a member of the Good Old Boys Club? Understand, this is how it really works. And not just in these kangaroo courts either. Little kangaroo courts are all over the United States that work the exact same way as these crooks. It's called policing for profit. These people are convicting for profit. This is how the member of the Good Old Boys Club, or the government ruling elite in the area, extract wealth out of the peasants. And the peasants are anyone who is not in the Good Old Boys Club. But that's not it. Let Matt Foster explain the entire situation once again at a different event. And keep in mind, this is because the Secretary of the District Attorney's Office see her neighbor driving without a license 150 feet down the side of the road to his produce stand. This is because of a dispute of a property line between Andrea Nunn, the Secretary of the District Attorney's Office, and her neighbor.
I'm Matt Foster, and I'm running for District Attorney. I want to give you an example of one of the things that happens in the DA's office that really gives me the passion to run for this office. There's an employee at the DA's office in Hancock County, a county employee, who has a dispute with a relative. And that employee manages to convince the district attorney's office to file charges against that employee's cousin's husband for operating after suspension. Now, that complaint is based completely on that employee's statement that that person saw the cousin's husband driving. The DA's office files the complaint and brings charges. The normal sentence for something like that, or the normal plea offer, would be for a fine. But in this particular case, they ask for a jail sentence. The cousin's husband decides that he wants to have a trial. I'm appointed to represent this gentleman. And he asked for a trial, and we filed a request for discovery. The DA's office completely ignores that request for discovery. 2 months go by. I file a request for sanctions. The court sanctions the DA's office and fines them $300 for not providing discovery to this defendant. What should make you angry, what makes me angry, is that the DA's office allowed an employee to use that office for personal vendetta against a relative.
Now, Andrea Nunn is sitting right here in the audience, and she is getting pissed straight off. Just watch the arrogance of this woman. She thinks what she's done is just fine, using state resources to look up her neighbor, and she thinks that because she is a member of the Good Old Boys Club, she has a right to do this. And Andrea Nunn says, we will see him in jail.
And what should make it even madder is that tax money that was to be spent to protect you as a community was turned over to the state as a penalty for them not doing the job. And that's why I believe I'm the best candidate for this position, because I won't let that happen. And I will make sure that your tax money is used appropriately and that nobody uses that office for any type of personal gain.
Mr. Foster, David Brown, Judge Bruce Maloney said he would see him in jail.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, you're out of order.
Well, I'm responding to exactly what he said. Judge Maloney who said, I'll see you in jail.
This is not an opportunity
he
for
still has no license.
personal situations here.
It's not personal. I'm required to have a license. His client should be also.
This is the secretary talking to a lawyer, the soon-to-be district attorney. Is this Twilight Zone stuff or what? Can you imagine this woman? The secretary of the district attorney's office, we will see him in jail.
You're out of order.
We will see him in jail.
Does anybody still not see how kangaroo this court is? From the lawyers, to the prosecutor, to the judges, to the secretary of the district attorney's office. And the secretaries in the clerk of courts can do the same thing. I know for a fact that the clerk of courts will make up stuff and put it on your criminal record, just because they're vindictive and members of the Good Old Boys Club. The grand jury that indicts people are all members of the Good Old Boys Club, and they all have a financial interest, whether it be court or counseling or something. So just to be clear, I want you to understand, there is a $1.1 million man-haters club called Next Step, whose job it is to coach any woman fighting with their male partner to get a protection from abuse order, as well as represent them in court. You have police that are nothing but predators that will always lie just a little on the police report. And this is so the district attorney can file multiple charges based on statements and not any facts. You got a grand jury that will indict you on somebody else's word, no proof. You're issued a court-appointed lawyer that works for the district attorney's office. The district attorney will hide evidence. Your court-appointed lawyer will help them. They will try to make you have a fake psychological evaluation that will be used against you in a court of law. In jail, you will be treated by a doctor without proper qualifications. The jail will rip you off with expensive phone calls and drastically overpriced commissary items. You will not get any bail money back even if you're found innocent. You will be ordered to take counseling because you will have to pay another member of the Good Old Boys Club. You will get several $100s in fines and fees and placed on a payment schedule, only to figure out that all those fines and fees doubled because now you're going to pay for all kinds of programs that they made up. After you sign the contract with the court saying that you will pay, a warrant will be issued. If you cannot pay up on time, your driver's license will be immediately taken away. Remember, in Maine, you need to be punished for being poor. And it's nice to know that any woman that you are with can always call the police anytime she is mad or gets vindictive and have you arrested, put in jail, then you have to post bail, go to court, hire a lawyer, pay fines, pay fees, all based on what she says. No proof is needed. And if it's discovered that the woman lied about everything, she will not be prosecuted and you still will. Yes, sir, that's just the place you want to live. And I've said it before, anyone who lives there that is not a member of the Good Old Boys Club is technically a slave, because this state has made nothing a crime. You can't do anything without a permit or a sticker or paying a fee. A bag of potato chips is a luxury, so you have to pay a higher tax. And this is because there's like 15,000 of them, all making an average of $50,000 or more a year. And that money has to come from someone. Guess who that is? And this is why I say again, if you live there, you can do better. I don't really think you could do any worse, except a couple places in Louisiana I know of that really ain't too pleasant. Justice Kangaroo. So do yourself a favor, put your resume on Indeed.com and see what comes of it. You might get a good opportunity to move to a place where you can actually have a life. Well, that's it for this show. Join us on the next Despicable Maine podcast, where we explore more of the dirty tricks and despicable tactics used by the scumbags in the state of Maine. Don't forget to like and subscribe. What can I get them for? What can I get them for? What can I get them for? Visit the land of egregious use of prosecutorial discretion.